really, at the end of the day, it's just the matter of a macro market. It's just what happens.
That's why it's really important to have a plan. Have a plan and understand what your goals are.
In fact, my camel out there is suffering right now with a broken back.
So I actually found Pepe when it was only a couple of hours old, and I'm like, oh, this is a funny meme.
Oh my god.
Yo! Who is this degen?
The old man is swing trading over years at a time. And it's like, that's where the real money is made.
The answer is impermanent loss. With single-sided staking, you don't have to worry about impermanent loss.
If you're aware, if you're disciplined, you can hone that into further financial growth.
Financial freedom, so we can actually live life and not have to be constantly living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, more or less, right?
And we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this our 12th or 13th or God, I don't know how many fucking book clubs we've done by now. I know we've done a lot, but welcome to the DGen Roundtable Book Club. I'm Will Stevenson, your host. I'm going to be hosting and driving, which totally is a first for me. So we'll see how this goes. But tonight we're going to be covering the chapter 1 of SciVive, written by our dearly beloved Richard Hart. Also narrated by a wild SJ, who will be joining us as well. Thank you for coming, SJ. Before we get into our introductions for everyone, I want to go ahead and thank the chats and thank everyone in the audience for watching, whether you guys are on the replay or you're catching this here with us live right now. Thank you for joining, and we know that time is your most valuable asset. So I just want to give a quick shout out to you guys for being here. But let's go ahead and introduce the panel today, so that way we all know who's here, who's talking, and who's doing what. What we're going to do is we're going to go around starting with our special guest and then clockwise throughout the panel. Just go ahead and give the folks at home a quick introduction of who you are, what you do, and like what your kind of background is in the crypto space for those folks who have never seen or heard you before. Wild SJ, we'll have you start off. Who are you? What do you do? Give the folks a quick little intro. Uh-oh. I think you're muted. That or I'm muted. Somebody's muted.
Me.
That's all right. We do it live, folks. All right, we can hear you.
Hey, hi everybody. So I'm a wild SJ. I have appeared, and yes, that's a Pokemon reference. So I was actually just telling this whole story, but basically a Reader's Digest version is that I found out about crypto years ago, was really interested in it. I've always been a little bit of a nerd into tech and gaming. And oopsie, hey, that's noise. And always thought I always loved the idea of taking back our finances, like just the underlying pirateness, right? Like the Robin Hoodness of having our finances, having control of our finances really appealed to me. So, long story short, I got into crypto through Hex, basically. Like bought a little, forgot about it. And then through my friend Crypto Kool-Aid, learned about Hex and dove in because I was ready. I was at that point in my life where I wanted to know about my finances. I wanted to be in control of my future with my, financial freedom and all that. So it was a really good spot. It was super synchronistic. And after spending about 6 months learning about Hex and how it worked and just, DCAing it a bit, I wanted to know who Richard was. And a big reason I'm on this show today is because as that journey continued, I learned that Richard had written 2 books. I'm a big audiobook listener and I travel a lot. So that's part of why. Well, I went to listen to the audio version of his book. I went to read it first and that was a nightmare. It was just like all jumbled together and really difficult to just make out even where sentences began or ended. And then the only version that existed at the time was a robotic, like speech to text. And this is way before AI got good, right? So it's like this and there's no punctuation and you can't tell what the emotions are. And I thought to myself, I liked the first page of the intro so much. I thought, I'm going to read this anyways. Why don't I just record myself reading it? So that way there's a human spoken version of this book. Not knowing really at all who Richard was, what the book was about, any of that. I was like, I'm just going to read it and we'll see. I mean, if I like Richard, I like him. If I don't, then, now he's got an audiobook. Like, here you go, buddy. So I dove in and I recorded the audiobook the first time around. And it was super unprofessional. You can hear dogs barking and my neighbor mowing his lawn in the background if you listen really closely. I loved it so much that it changed my life in several different ways. And I decided to take an audiobook class so that I could do better. So I actually edited the book and then re-recorded it so that it would be Audible ready. So that's a big reason why I'm here. That was my content for a lot of time. Up until like the last year or so, I really did a lot of things that revolved around SciVive and creating content about SciVive. And I've just kind of switched roles and have become the self-proclaimed positivity princess of the Richard Hart ecosystem. So that's where I'm at now. And I do a lot of stuff with
Excellent. Well, thank you for that fantastic intro, SJ, and welcome again to the DGen Roundtable. We've also done a stream with you in the past where we had a little like a deep dive into like who is SJ. You, I think, were one of our first guests when we first started picking guests up as a podcast. So thank you very much for joining us. And coming up next, we're going to start with Nate McGettick. How's it going, bro? What's new and exciting with you? And give us a quick little introduction of who you are and what you do on the DGen Roundtable.
Well, I mean, I'm on the DGen Roundtable right now to talk about a book that we listened to. I almost didn't make this podcast here because I am feeling a bit under the weather. So I apologize if I randomly start coughing my face off and get interrupted. But yeah, no, this listening to this, there's quite a few things into it, and there's a lot of things into it. I mean, we're only chapter 1, and the chapter 1 was like 4 hours long, which was absolutely ridiculous. But there was some very interesting viewpoints that I hadn't really thought about too much because I'm someone who loves to listen to things that are very interesting, to think about, but it's more like speculation on the future. Whereas Richard Hart talks a lot about, just kind of putting that stuff out, not really focusing on that, and instead focusing on learning whatever it is that you can apply today or apply for your life to further whatever it is that you want to achieve. And it's an interesting idea for me because, obviously I'm not exactly that type. So I was able to kind of think over that for a bit here. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one.
Excellent. Thank you, Nate. Mr. Zenith, you're up next, bro. Who are you? What do you do? And what's new and exciting with you, dude?
Good evening, gang. It's good to see everybody. I am the TradFi kind of suit and tie person on the DGen Roundtable. Some have called me a jack of all trades, but I like to focus on governmental stuff, course gate ruling, and I also just try to use the KISS method for my personal investing, which is keeping it simple, stupid, because I'm just trying to make sure we don't fumble the bag too much. But yes, other than that, I am also known for kind of starting up the book club a little bit, but I am pulling a trick out of my officer days, and I am empowering one of my highly capable and motivated NCOs, Will, to kick ass, and I am here to support him the best I can. So that's what I'm here to do.
This is your baby, this book club thing. And bro, like, to be honest, like, I am super appreciative that we're doing this book club stuff, because like, realistically, I would not be going out and about and reading books on my own and learning all the cool things that I've essentially forced myself to learn by agreeing to do this. And just like, it's been such a blast of a time, and fuck am I appreciative that like you went out and made this thing for us, bro. So big shout out to you. Next up, we got Mr.
I was going to say,
go ahead.
A page out of your book, which is once you speak it into existence, you're kind of obligated to do the thing and follow through. So I said I was going to read books, and this is the way that I'm forcing myself to do so. And I'm very thankful that all you guys are along for the ride and helping make it even better.
Goddamn right, bro. Accountability buddies. That's what we all are. And speaking of accountability buddies, I have a fantastic accountability buddy brother who is next up for the introductions, Mr. Sam Stevenson. Go ahead and give yourself a quick little intro. Tell the folks who you are, what you do, and what's new and exciting with you, bro.
Hey, everybody. My name is Sam Stevenson. I am the owner of Mr. Bungalows for Bachelors and Stevenson Integrated Designs. I am the guy who loves everything about residential construction. If you want to learn about home building, design, how to like do stuff in construction on your own. But more importantly, I am also Will Stevenson's accountability buddy. That's really what I do. And it's so important to me that I tattooed it on my wrist so I wouldn't forget.
You're goddamn right.
That's what I'm about.
Hell yeah, dude. I love it. I got that same tattoo. Fuck yeah. We'll show it constantly on stream. And then finally, we've got our fantastic producer, Mrs. McGettit. Mrs. McGettit is the one who is the lady behind the scenes. She's running all the camera switching, keeping up with all the chats, doing all the fantastic stuff. Miss McGettit, I guess I've done a little bit of your intro for you. Go ahead and tell the folks who you are, what you do, and what's new and exciting with you.
Well, first I want to say, Will, it's very bold of you to assume that I know what clockwise is, you know, just off the top of your head there. But anyways, as you've already said, I'm producer. Sorry, that was maybe a little loud. And I just basically make our thumbnails, do our social medias, make the background. Well, I didn't make this background, but I modified it, recolored this one for the book club. I'm hoping to maybe make these the new book club colors because I like them a lot, and I feel like we could have, you know, even more variety. So yeah, exciting stuff in the works.
Excellent. Is there anything? And we're gonna hop into community chats right after this. Zenith, are you ready and prepared to do so?
We are ready and prepared. The chats have been starred, and the boys are showing up.
Sweet. Excellent. I want to thank everybody in the chats. I can't see you guys today, so literally the only interaction that I have with the chats right now is other people shouting it out. Also, it's very dangerous to look at chats while driving. So why don't you go ahead and shout out the guys in the chats, and let's get this welcome mat rolled out, and then we'll go ahead and hop on into some cool questions and topics of convo.
Absolutely. First up, we have our strip club music enthusiast, Hexagon Lost in Asia, rolling in for the intro, and also saying Pulse Chain is on discount. That's right. If my memory serves me correct, I think Pulse Chain is at 3 zeros and a 1.2 right now, and then Hex is about 1.2 cents. So if you enjoy these fine tokens and think that they are going to be doing well in the future, this may be an opportune time to pick it up, but again, not financial advice. Next up, we got Pulse Axe. He says, we got Russ with the fire chat, and then we got Pulse Axe saying, Will, is that OJ's Bronco you're driving?
I'm driving my my beat up Chevy Silverado with real tornadoes under the hood. No Fords for this guy.
Yeah, Will's a classy guy. He drives the bow tie. There you go. Next up, we got Russ with the fire emoji. And then after that, we got Zach Ken. Says, yes to Hexagon Lost in Asia. Buy Pulse Chain stuff and Richard Hart products so that you don't stay poor with fiat. Quoting Michael Saylor of MicroStrategies there. Notably, unfortunately, he preaches about there is no second best, but he just became a third place effectively to BlackRock in the Bitcoin holdings position. So he's getting beaten out by the megacorps, but I'm sure he'll make a comeback soon. All right, up next, we got Crypto Black Sheep. What is going on, brother? Thank you so much for coming on Wednesday and the last Sunday show. We've had an absolute blast streaming with you this week. Super happy to see you here so we can show you what we do with the book club. After that, we got Hex Glenn. Hey, boys, girls, and D-Gens. The gentlemen of all ages. Yes. Good to see you, Glenn. Thanks for showing up. We're very excited to talk to you. And lastly, good friend of the channel, Mr. Angry Twinkie. Glad you are covering this because I can't read. You would be surprised how many of us over here also cannot read. And instead, we listen to SJ tell us what to do at 2 times speed. So there you go.
Bazinga.
All right. That is what we got. Will, back to you, brother.
Excellent. Sweet. Thank you for reading out those chats. And again, thank you for the community and all those folks who are sitting here watching us live and the guys catching us on the replay. We really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys smash that like button, share the show out to your friends, leave us a comment down below. Tell us how horrible you think that we are and all of our terrible, terrible ideas. Give us all your energy and all your attention. We're going to go ahead and jump into the first topic of chapter 1, which is focused on the mind, with the very first sentence that Richard Hart reads off in the beginning, which is that you know more than you need and you do less than you could, or you know shit. I totally butchered that, but it's something along those lines where you know too much information and you don't do enough shit.
May I assist you?
Yeah, go for it.
Here we go. You do less than you could, and you know more than you need.
Ah, fuck, there it is. Hell yeah. But yeah, so that is the first like sentence in chapter 1, and I think that's probably the most salient point. That's the biggest thing that I picked up out of this whole out of the whole SciVive whatever, is it like I need to just do more shit. I need to just get out there and get goals accomplished. I need to stop like sitting around learning about things. I need to go out and take care of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this open up the conversation to the rest of the panel. What did you guys think when you read this very first sentence? Ready, set, go. Somebody grab it. You guys all got it.
Yeah, this is kind of a slap in the face for me. And this is what I was talking about. Because like for me, I'm someone who sits there and thinks about what the possibilities of what black holes could be, right? You know, how you could possibly create a teleporter using quantum mechanics or quantum field, sorry. And then, yeah, and things, you know, as simple as like, hey, what if there's actual, you know, spiritual plane of some kind, right? How could we get there as well? Different dimensions. And so I really love to look into that, or even like, what is AI going to do in the future? You know, well, what's the possibilities of that? And so I have a lot of fun envisioning these things and learning about them. But that's not exactly actionable for my life right now, you know? And so when he says you need to do more and learn less, that's kind of I almost feel like that's directly to me, just.
He was calling you out, bro. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll jump right in here. So this was like, again, this is kind of a slap in the face, but I've been dealing with this kind of thing slap me in the face for the last like 5 years of my life. And I used to be on that level where it's like, 5 years ago, I'm planning for 10 years ahead. And I'm like, yeah, it's good to plan for things generally, but like I wasn't spending any time focusing on what is important. What do I need to be doing right now to improve myself right now? And I would have to say, it's like, it's taken a while to sort of train that habit out and like really focus on, I mean, even now you can get overwhelmed with whiteboards, right? It's like you can whiteboard analyze this and whiteboard analyze that and like think about this thing and plan that thing and analyze this budget and do that future planning thing or whatever. But like sometimes you just need to stop and like do the next like job or like work on the next thing that's going to improve the next most like obvious step. Maybe I need to sit down and like clean the litter box or whatever, you know? You just got to stop thinking and start doing. So I can totally relate to you, Nate.
Excellent.
Perfect.
I think that go ahead, Nate.
I was going to say, I'm going to try to wrap this into a question and kick it over to SJ, because I think that I know for a fact she has spent a lot of time digesting this work. So the reason that I like that you opened up with this first sentence in the chapter, specifically on mind, and for folks at home, if you go and look at the actual length of the different chapters, this one is far and away one of the largest ones, and it's also the first one. I think there's a reason for that, because it all starts with the mind. Kind of the way that this entire book is broken down is we have like the you, the tools, and then the world. So first up, we have the mind. The reason that he talks about this is that my understanding is that Richard Hart wrote this book to help people better their lives, which means that you are helping people try to physically do better. This is not like a theoretical or ideological piece of work, even though it is some ideological. It is practical, and it is meant to be useful. And I think that is absolutely highlighted throughout the rest of this chapter, and it's even summed up here, which is that when he says you do less than you could and you know more than you need, which is one of those things where it's like, stop thinking about things, start doing things. And that really plays into the practicality or the pragmatism of this chapter, it feels like. So I wanted to throw it over to SJ. It seems like Richard Hart is a big fan of the 80-20, which is you don't need a perfect solution, but you just need to get going, and then a lot of stuff is going to work it out along the way. Would you agree with that?
That's an interesting take. I don't feel like that is something he would agree with.
Okay.
Necessarily.
I'll put it this way. I bring it up this way is because he talks about the Pareto principle, which is the 80-20.
Right.
And then it's also one of those things where it's like, he mentions that a lot of information is useless, but a lot of useful things in the world are a result of action, which means that less thinking, more action. So that's why I phrased it the way I did.
Yeah, I think like I agree in part because I, based on what you're basing it on, like I can see that. I also think that a lot of what he's trying to get at with this, and especially because mind, being the first chapter and being such a long chapter, it is really kind of one of the first things that strikes you and it sticks with you as you're reading the entirety of the rest of the book. And part of what I want to say is I think that he's trying to get everyone to do better, right? You kind of touched on that. And I don't necessarily agree with it's like, less thinking, but less useless thinking, right? I think he wants people to think in more imaginative and creative ways. There's, in fact, later on in the book, and I can't remember if this is in mind, but he goes into talking about how it's better to, instead of listening to other people's music or intaking other people's content or, you know, reading other people's books, write your own book, sing your own song, do your own thing, right? So yeah, so yes and no, right? I agree with that, but also, you know, I think what he's really wanting us to do is just be better and do better and think better and act better, all of it together.
I got something.
Go for it.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Cass.
Okay, just real quick. Would you probably say that what he's trying to say is less overthinking then?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, less overthinking and less thinking about things that can't be solved, right? He says that often. Don't think about the problems of tomorrow. Solve today's problems today.
So kind of similar to the idea behind the Serenity Prayer. Don't kill yourself trying to fix something that you just can't.
Yeah. Grant me the wisdom to oh shoot, man. I was gonna try and quote it and I just totally forgot. But yeah, that's a good analogy, Miss McGinnon. The thing I was gonna say on this topic is I think that it's not, so he's giving two different sets of advice here. One is like for younger people that don't know what they're doing, and then one is for like older people who have more like bases of knowledge and experience, and that's more of like what your point was about, SJ. I think that like the advice for the young folks, for the people who don't really know what they're doing in life, who are still lost and directionless, is just get some sort of momentum going. You're gonna make a whole bunch of mistakes. Try and learn as much as you can to like obviously like deal with more mistakes than you need to make, but like you would give different advice to like someone in their 20s than you would give to someone in their 30s than you would give to someone in their 40s, you know? So like I think that Zenith, that your interpretation of like the just get started and stuff, that's good for the younger folks, the people who haven't like built up any life momentum yet. And SJ, you talking about like, hey, you guys need to like at some point you need to like, baby bird has to fly out of the nest, right? You can't be sitting around learning other people's stuff all the time. You got to go out and make your own stuff. But like, I can't write a book if I don't know how to speak. And the only way I learn how to speak is by chilling out and hanging out with other people and learning like what they have to say, taking in all that knowledge and information from everyone else, and then like just going and doing stuff. So like I think that you guys like your guys' interpretations are both spot on. It applies differently to different people in different walks of life and things like that. So that's my little 2 cents on this bit. But I definitely agree that like just having forward momentum and just doing something as opposed to like sitting back and like doing the whole like, what's the phrase, fucking mental masturbation or whatever, where people just like, oh yeah, I'm getting smarter and smarter and smarter, then they never do anything. And then next thing you know, they're like 6 foot under pushing up daisies, and it's like all that knowledge stuck in their squishy gray brain is just like seeping out into the dirt doing nothing. So those are my thoughts.
In regards to the timeline of life, he does bring up another point pretty early, which I think is very important. He talks about how the most effective time to learn is younger because it means that you have that knowledge for more portion of your life. It seems very utilitarian, which is that you are, for I guess like video game terms, you are higher level for more of your playtime. Therefore, it's less grinding that you have to do, and you're kind of just further along, so you can utilize that mastery to better yourself. It's stacking those wins on wins on wins. So I like that he promotes learning early on. Doesn't promote like stop learning, but it's just like you are going to get the most utilitarian value out of your knowledge and your learned experience by doing it earlier rather than later.
Yo, there's a that brings me you just flawlessly transitioned me into my next the next quote. Or it's not really a quote, right? So I didn't write everything down verbatim, but one of the talking points that he had was to give kids, like when kids are in school, when kids are like in some sort of education system, to not waste their time, to not have them do like stupid, like meaningless things like learning the Pythagoras theorem or learning about calculus or learning about just a whole bunch of irrelevant, useless data. Have them learn and solve real life problems. What do you guys think about the public education system, specifically in regards to like college or elementary or middle school or high school or whatever, when it comes to like the way that we educate kids? How can we better invest in our children's future by teaching them how to interact with the real world or solve real problems or anything like that.
So this was an interesting one for me, and I wholeheartedly believe in this one. And so to kind of just bounce back real quick, it almost seems like utilitarian ways of thinking, trying to practice and learn how to do things is better when you're younger, and the philosophy type stuff and in thinking on how to be better humans in general should be an older person type of thing, kind of like the wise old man, right? That it would make a lot of sense since you've already learned how to do and you've already done throughout your life, and now it's time to help put ideas into the younger generation's heads how to be better people. And then with that, the younger generation can then, in this where the schools come in, or I should say fail at, should be teaching kids how to, well, live proper lives, right? One of the funniest things in school that I have no clue why nobody learns about it is finances. There is no financial anything in schools. You know, whatever happened to like home ec class? I've been hearing these days that stuff has basically been going out the window. And I mean, if you're learning calculus, right, maybe you'll find those few kids, right, who are going to really truly learn how to do something with that math. Otherwise, all you really need to do is learn, math, addition, subtraction, division, things like that, right? That right there is practical in daily life. The rest of it, like maybe percentages and decimals as well, right? But then after that point, for the most part, it's not going to be a daily occurrence. And so what you could do just from out of that math class is just take those basics, move it over into quite literally anything else in life and be like, okay, so I can use the math to now start trying to learn about finances. How do you do entrepreneurship, right? Let's go ahead and do the math now that I learned in school to now try and balance an account book or something like that, right? Here's how I could, build out my lemonade stand, right? This is the idea of like learning something to then go put it to work and then practice how to build something for your life,
What you think learning how to cook and make and enjoy food is more important than learning the Pythagorean theory? What's wrong with you?
I thought you were being serious at first, and I was like, where the hell is Cass taking this?
It's actually funny because when I finished up high school back, a million years ago, because I'm obviously ancient, they got rid of health class the year after I left. Like the class, that teaches you what like reproductive organs are and stuff. They eliminated it from the school. And we never had home ec actually in my high school. I took home ec in middle school, but we didn't even have it as an option in high school. So
yeah, the economics, like the economy of a home is pretty important. A lot of people, like I didn't have home ec either. I don't know if that was even an option back in our little high school back home. Sam, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I never saw it anywhere on the curriculum or anything like that. But like the economy of like how do you like take care of a house? I think that's pretty important. Like doing laundry, cleaning like once or twice a month, like doing dishes, fixing ductwork, roofing, like gutters, mowing lawn. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into filing taxes. Yeah.
Filling out a checkbook correctly. Yeah. I didn't learn anything about any of that. And in middle school, I had random teachers who just decided to teach us some of that. Like our art teacher taught us about the stock market and actually went out and set up mock stocks for everybody in the class. We teamed up with like groups of 4. We'd each have our own stock portfolio. And then whoever was doing the best got to like go up in front of the class and talk about what they were doing. I mean, that was an art teacher. Just because she wanted to, she thought it was important, literally. And then my homeroom teacher took us out into the middle of the hallway one day and taught everybody how to fill out a checkbook correctly. Like I got lucky that I had some good teachers who really did care about those like real world things, but so much of school is just useless, really. It really does boil down to it.
Oh, go ahead. It sounded like someone had something there.
I was just I'm just agreeing. Like it's just regurgitation of books that were written that people said were facts at one point in time, and so much of it is just trash, junk, and untrue.
Yeah, that was gonna be my follow-on question. Is like, what is your guys' level of faith in the education system? You know, like, would you send your kids to a public school? Would you send your kids to a private school? Would you have your kids do homeschooling, pod learning? You know,
Yeah,
like,
you know what, Bill? Actually, I would 100% send my kid to a public school. You want to know why?
what's that?
Because it teaches something that they don't even purposely try to teach. How to move in a public setting in society.
Oh, can you elaborate?
Well, think about it this way. You always have like the little cliques, right? The little cliques are like, the popular kids. You got the druggies and things like that, right? Okay. If you're looking around in life, what do you got? You got the celebrities, right?
Nate, I like how your scale is you're either popular or you're smoking pot. It's somewhere between there.
You could be where I was at, which was a freaking nerd, but sure, I guess.
Hey,
this is like
let's go.
This is like a sliding scale. No room for adaptability.
Yeah, no, but you get the idea,
Yeah.
So I would definitely send my kid to public school to either be bullied by, a kid bigger than him. So that way he can learn how to deal with situations like that when you start getting bullied in real life, I should say, adult life. When you get bullied in adult life, that can get dangerous, So,
Okay.
yeah, it's just different things involved with that. But I'm telling you what, when it actually comes to learning how to live his life and how to be the best man possible, I'm teaching him.
Okay. That was going to be my follow-on to that. Excellent.
Yeah, our poor little guy's gonna have double school. There's just no way around it. Poor guy.
I do have a question, Nate, for the time leverage of the amount of time spent in a place that is full of useful information versus the quality of the information that he will receive in that place. Have you considered the efficiency or the leverageability of learning those lessons versus like how much of your kid's time is going to be spent like wasting away doing bullshit and other stuff in order to extract those lessons and things from that public school setting? What is the cost, I suppose?
So what's funny about that is it's actually very good time well spent. Okay. Here's the reason why. Because then that adds in, hey, here's useless information that you're learning. And it's going to come out in the form of, Dad, why am I learning this? And be like, because they want you to. What are you going to use it for? Maybe I could give a couple of examples. But then that will segue me into being able to teach my child, okay, here's what you should be learning and focusing on, because you can use these things, these lessons, to then fill in the blank thing we're doing, right?
I have another challenge question for you, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm not trying to tear your stuff down. But what if he asks you why he's being sent to a place to learn things that are like, he's like, hey, Dad, why are you sending me to a place that teaches me wrong things?
And why are you ruining my life?
Yeah, more or less. Like that's what I'm trying to drive at, but like in kid words
to
or
give
whatever.
Contrast.
Yeah.
To give contrast. You can't know what a lie is until you know what telling the truth is, right? You can't know the color black unless you see the color white, right? You can't see a dark blue until you see a light blue. Like you can't what's going to end up happening is he's going to start seeing the contrast between what he's confused at and why the teachers are yelling at him, you need to learn this, and then me in real life actually making things that make people happy.
Yeah.
And I'm not using any of that information. I'm able to tell them, this is the information, this is what I learned, this is the information that has caused this in real life to happen. So it's the contrast.
Gotcha. This is good reasoning, bro. I like it. I like that you've thought this through.
The short answer.
That's more than like sadly what most folks would do. Go ahead, Sam.
The short answer is because Andrew Tate hasn't come out with his own schooling platform yet for young children.
Kids can't join Hustlers University or no, what is it? It's called The Real World now, right? The Real World, I think. That's for adults learning drop shipping and things.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here real quick. So this part of the Mind chapter, when he specifically talks about education and the education system, it is one of the parts that really calls out what we're doing in the real world right now, which is, I believe, it's not an exact quote, but he more or less attributes the current education model is more of a babysitting model than an actual education model. What he means by that is that everyone is all together and that everyone moves at the same speed. And on top of that, if you're unable to move at the same speed as those people, there's no ahead curve, there's only a behind curve, which is that you're forced to learn subjects one by one. And if you don't get it, then you have to repeat it. And there's only a backfilling process. There's no forward filling process. So even if you don't like learning the useless information, or even if you're very good at the memorization, which is what he ascribes it to, is that you are only able to ever stay at the current speed that they allow you to go, instead of actually get ahead and learn information that you want to know. You have to know the subjects that are presented to you at the time they're presented to you. And then if you are unable to do that, then you're just going to keep doing it before you're allowed to advance. So I think that's part of the babysitting idea with this. But I know right now with everything going on, obviously Richard Hart does not reside in the United States. However, he was born in the US, so this is a pretty good critique of the American education system. In particular, I think he went through school in like the 80s and 90s before he eventually got out, and then I think he was running some small business at some point as like a car audio store in Florida, if my memory serves me correct. But the point of calling this out is it ties back into the idea of that you need to know the knowledge you need to know and nothing else. In engineering, production rather, there's an idea of, are you pushing parts to the assembly line, or are you on the assembly line pulling parts to you? It's the idea of, do you have the tools in front of you right when you need them, or are you having to go back and forth and go grab the knowledge or go grab the tools and materials that you need? What he talks about in this one is kind of this concept of the best time to learn the thing that you need to know is the minute right before you need to know it. Because any time other than that before is just wasted space. So it kind of fits in that similar situation, but at the same time, is it possible to know the information you need in the future? Not necessarily. So again, this feels to me, it felt like to me that this is more of that utilitarian approach to learning, which I entirely understand. I don't think that's how Richard Hart sees the world, but in this telling of the critique on education and how we do it, it makes sense to me, which is that, is the information useful? Yes or no? Are you able to go at the speed that you need to? Yes or no? And then what other things are holding you back? And then based on that assessment, it's like, yeah, is this more education or is this more babysitting? And it sounds like he diagnoses it as babysitting instead of education.
I think I would agree with that. I think he quoted Mark Twain in the book talking about don't let schooling get in the way of your education, and I think that's a nice little dovetail slide into the next topic, which is learning how to have good ideas before learning how to express things. I think that I want to say that he was talking about learning rhetoric before learning logic versus learning logic before learning rhetoric. Rhetoric just being like the ability to speak well and present things. And it's more important to be able to have like a solid foundation of ideas and understanding than it is to be able to speak eloquently on things that are like bad. Like you don't want to become a good salesman and not know and because then you're going to sell bad things. So like if you go around having all these terrible ideas and stuff, and you're a good salesman without like a good foundational knowledge basis. I don't know where I was going with this. Learn how to have good ideas before how to essay. Oh yeah, they were talking about. I think he was. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, in tying into this, it's the idea of rhetoric or logic. Which one comes first and which one comes after? It seems a bit of a chicken and egg thing, but it also, in my opinion, ties into something that gets mentioned very early on in the chapter, which is that one of the first things Richard talks about is the idea of that you should learn one language the best you can instead of multiple languages, because the premise is that if you learn multiple languages, you're only going to reach a certain proficiency in each of those languages. However, if you only stick to one, you're going to have the ability to explore ideas and talk about ideas in a much deeper and diverse way than in any of the other multiple languages it's possible to learn. I wanted to ask SJ about this one because I was curious why this is one of the first things that get mentioned and why it's here, because there's obviously going to be a point to it, but I think it ties into the deeper thing of like, it's possible to learn more information, but at the same time, it feels like there's kind of opposing views, which is that a ton of information is unnecessary. So why have the ability to learn more if more of it is just not needed?
That's a great question.
I was just trying to kick it over to you. Sorry, that's too.
Yeah, no, it's just very like it's a big topic to kind of think.
That's fair, but maybe from like an editorial perspective, like why is this one of the first ideas that Richard Hart puts in the mind section? The idea that you should learn one language, or even calls out Warren Buffett saying you should probably learn the language of business and accounting.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of that is just honing in on being great instead of being mediocre at all these different little things, right? It seems, and this may play into it too. I think Richard, after reading SciVive, I feel like he's got kind of this, what's the word for it? Like an admiration of the greats, right? He speaks to that several times. He brings up a lot of great men that have done great things in the past. And he himself, I think, is seeking to do that as well. He wants to be great. He wants to be known as the greatest man in crypto. And I feel like part of what he's saying in speaking to that, right, and in wanting us to focus more on less, is that be great at something, be great at one thing instead of being all right at many things. And he does, I believe he speaks to that a little bit later on in the book as well, is that there's some section that kind of goes over exactly what I'm saying is, it's the focus and kind of part of the point I was going to get to is that, outside of Elon, and I mean, and maybe this is just me not having a lot of, outside of Richard and SciVive, not seeking too many, there's not a lot of people that I admire. There's not a lot of people that I spend time reading or listening to. And part of that, I think, is just like my mental, like the way that I am as a person. I'm a very creative person. And what I was saying earlier about doing your own thing and creating your own stuff, right? Whatever input I got that got me to the point of where I'm at now in terms of being able to create and put out my own song into the world, I feel like that is something that maybe is like a little unique and is something that a lot of people spend a lot of time striving for. I have a great friend who is one of these people that Richard kind of talks about in this book. She's someone that just will, every single lesson or teacher or book or all of these different seminars, like she'll sign up and go to every single one of them and still not have the answers and still not have a way and still not know what she's doing, so it's maybe a little bit of that analysis paralysis, right? There's too much to focus on. So if you can't hone it down, right, and just focus on the one thing and be great at that one thing, then do that.
So you think she's kind of like diluting her potential to like form like a set mindset on things by just experiencing a lot of different stuff? Is that what you were saying?
It's in part, but also just like not being able to get past, like, I feel like she's got hangups, right? Like there's a lot of things that happened to her maybe when she was younger, or things that she doesn't really know how to deal with. So she's reading all these different self-help books and going to these seminars and learning all these things, but it's like he keeps doing that instead of healing whatever it was, or actually taking action to move forward away from the pain and the hurt and whatever has got her hung up.
There's a fantastic, this is kind of a little bit of an off topic, well, sort of, it has to do with what you're saying, but there's another book called The One Thing by Gary Keller. Sam, is that the one who wrote The One Thing?
Yeah.
I want to say it's Gary Keller. Yeah, the one thing by Gary Keller. Sam, can you kind of sort of describe like how that like I don't want to put you on the spot too much if you're not ready for it, but like I guess it's just like people need to figure out their thing to do or something like that.
It's got like a few different like categories of thought, but basically the first thing is what you just said, which is people need to figure out what their one thing is in this world. Like, what is your business? What is your, like, people call it different words. Basically, it's like, what are you here for? Like, how are you going to make the world a better place? You figure that out. And the other thing that it's about is like anti-multitasking, right? It's focused on that one thing at a time, right? So if I figured out that I want to bathe cats for a living, and like that's the thing that's what makes me happy, and that's how I can contribute to the world, then I need to be spending like all of my free time learning about how can I do that the best possible way. You know, do I need to wrap them up in a towel first? Do I need to like duct tape their legs together? Whatever it may be, I have to spend like all my energy focusing on that one thing, and then like not multitasking and like having other stuff going on while you're doing stuff. It's got multiple conversational topics in it, but like, yeah, the general premise is like figure out what the one thing is. And like, that's going to be the most efficient way to accomplish your goals. It's not that you can't like eventually figure out what thing you want to do by going to 100 different seminars. It's just that like, it's not going to be as efficient, and we've all got limited time. So we might as well try to be efficient.
Sam, on your topic of the one thing, I think this is something that there's kind of an undercurrent in a lot of stuff that you see throughout the world, but it's not explicitly called out. It's that whenever people do focus in and pour all their attention, effort, and time into one thing, they're rewarded in multiple different ways. I think first off, if you look at the education system, the best way to kind of understand the different like collegiate degrees that you can acquire is that getting a bachelor's degree is kind of like, if you imagine your core of your high school education, the bachelor's degree kind of is another outer layer on top of that. If you get a master's degree, then that means you're increasing your outer layer a bit more, but in one direction. And then the PhD discipline is kind of just, imagine just like the very, very edge of all human knowledge. There's a new pimple that forms, and you've expanded human knowledge in that one different direction. That is the educational equivalent of you pouring all that time, energy, and attention to make that pointy tip of the spear and poke it out a little bit further. Conversely, in the business world, especially talking about Alex Ramosi, this is a topic from $100 Million Offers, which is that the fastest way to achieve business success is not to pour energy and effort into like 10 different business ideas. It's you put all of that like liquid energy into one cup until the point that it overflows. So this is a concept that like it exists in society. However, when you look at the 50% solution for the average man, I think it's not something that like society promotes or we teach commonly. It's that you try to be generally well-rounded as opposed to be an expert in one field. When you really examine things, it's people that really pour that energy, effort, and time into those one singular things. That's where they really make that breakthrough.
Any chance I can kind of pop in here real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
First off, Zenith, pimple analogy. Ew, thank you for that. Did not need that visual. Second off, I think, when was this book written? Do we know the year?
The book was published in 2018.
2018. Okay. What I wanted to say here is I think this is kind of almost a generational thing that he's getting at. If you're observant of kind of the millennials, Gen X, Gen Z type of, I guess, area, we've been put into a position where, I mean, and I think he says this during the book, correct me if I'm wrong, that people go to college to learn something that they're never going to use.
Yeah.
And that's because the market for the college type skills are already super saturated. And since people are now working until they're like in their 60s, you're never going to use those skills. It's really difficult now to get a college level degree and then have it actually be like worth anything. So the newer generations have been kind of spinning their wheels, I think is a good way to put it. I help with a mental health group. And one thing that I see in there that I observe all the time is the younger generation, like right after kind of ours, where my age group is at. They are just completely lost. They go to school to learn basically nothing because they have no idea what they want to do, or again, what they want to do is already so saturated that they can't really realistically do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of us are in that position now where there's not really those opportunities. And so I think that's a big part of what this book is talking about. It's not a bad thing to learn things, not at all. That's not what he's trying to say, you know, in my opinion. What he's saying is that having that mentality that we have right now, where it's just like there's so much going on, and there's so much that people are trying to just like dip their toes into to see, oh, do I like this, or do I like that, or do I like that? That we have a lot of people now who are like, they're in the position of being a jack of all trades and a master of none. And basically he's trying to like emphasize to people, you need to turn that around and go back to being the master of something. Like being a jack of all trades is not necessarily a position you want to be in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, one of the issues I have with that though is it's the issue of like, oh, go out and find your passion. That's what everyone always says. Just find your passion. And then you sit there for like 10 years trying to find your passion. Oh, I think I like this thing. And then you start doing it and you're like, maybe not. So the issue that you're going to run into then is you're just always going to be a jack of all trades, constantly spinning the wheel, right? And you're never getting anywhere.
Well, so I think, Nate, go ahead, finish your thing.
So, you know, how do you solve that? And that's what Richard Hart talks about in this book is like, you know what, instead of just trying to figure out, you know, spinning your wheels, trying to figure out, oh, you know, maybe I should go here, maybe I should go there, wherever. Instead, be very utilitarian about it and say, hey, I could make a lot of money and in a place where not a lot of people go, right? Kind of like you will, climbing towers and all that, you know, changing a light bulb. It's like what, 5,000 per light bulb or whatever. You know, one of those things. Well, it's like, okay, how many people are actually doing that? Not a lot, right? So if nothing else, maybe you could go to some sort, or like metalworking, you know, just one of these trades, right? Something that's going to actually be able to make you, you know, a good living. Now, if you have a good living, then you can start hobbies, and hobbies you can start like maybe 3 at a time, things that you just happen to kind of like. And as you're doing them, which is very little at a time, right? It's not like you're going all in. But while doing them little at a time, you start realizing, hey, this one in particular one, I really, really like this one. I want to kind of focus in on that one. And maybe you start knocking off all the other little hobbies you have. And the next thing you know, that one little hobby you start focusing on that you really like is like, oh, I'm getting to the point now where I can actually like turn this into a money-making thing. And then, yeah, it just goes from there. Next thing you know, you're doing your favorite thing in the world.
You hit the nail on the head. It was something about, I can't remember the exact wording of it, but he was talking about in the book that like the value of knowledge is inversely proportional to like its availability. So like if everybody knows something, like with a couple exceptions, one being like language or something, you know, so we can communicate with each other. But like barring the anomalies, like the more common an amount of information is, like the less valuable it is. Well, I guess the more common anything is, the less valuable it is, right? Like there's dirt everywhere. Dirt's not incredibly valuable, right? There's water everywhere. Water's not incredibly valuable unless you're in a place where there is no water. Then it's like super valuable. Like
what about sand in the desert?
Yeah, or sand in the desert. Very, very non-valuable. We had a little bit about that, Sam. Is that what I think that's what you're referencing? I can't really.
Yes, the Pope is buying up all this desert sand is what's happening.
Yep, it's the damn Pope buying up all the desert sand. If you guys want to get in on that inside joke, go check out our Instagram. But for the folks at home,
one of the good points that I picked up in this chapter.
Yeah,
which
go
is
ahead.
About it's the mental and the knowledge supply and demand curves, which is that the more available the supply is, the less demand there is going to be for it, because it's so widely available that anybody can sell it. And similar to like the free market of ideas, the more people that are selling it, the more people are going to try to undercut each other. And then this also ties on the other side of the house to what SJ was talking about earlier, which is that the ability to think creatively and come up with unique and novel solutions, that is where the most valuable ideas are going to be. Because if you look at this, we just talked about like how if everyone knows how to do a thing, you're not going to pay anybody to teach you how to do it, because either you already know how to do it or someone's willing to do it for cheaper probably. However, if you have an idea that you yourself alone know, that means you are a one of one. You are the Alex Hormozy hyper niche market, and you can charge however much you want for that information. And on the flip side, that information is also equally valuable to however much you pretty much want to charge for it. So, I mean, I do want to kick it over to SJ, which is that I don't claim to be a creative person. I try to learn as much as I can and replicate and just steal ideas and try to innovate on them on my own. One of the things we talk about here a lot is that there's nothing new under the sun. However, when you do find something new under the sun, that really seems like the golden ticket. So I know you're a very creative person. So like, how do you come up with your ideas?
Oof. All these hard-hitting questions, man.
Sorry.
No, it's all good.
Try to keep going.
Yeah, for real.
There we go.
I mean, so the first thing that comes to mind is for me it's music, right? Like I have struggled with, and you know, this is kind of one of those not oxymoron, like ironic things, right? Is that I preach SciVive, I love SciVive. SciVive's changed my life, and probably the greatest challenge I've ever faced, that I've faced for many years, is getting into the action of recording my voice and making music. Because I've tried to play guitar and ukulele and piano, and I know that my instrument is my voice, and I know that I'm good at it, and I know that I want to do that. However, as a perfect example, a very applicable story that's happening right now is that I'm working with a producer who does drum and bass, who happens to also be a Hexagon. And he's sent me 4 tracks, and they're my tracks. And like, in terms of like, he's going to put me on these tracks. And he sent these to me probably almost a year ago now, and is the most wonderful, patient person in the universe, because he will gently nudge me often. He'll be like, hey, how's it going? How's it coming along? And only recently, like, I'll go through spurts, right? It's partly just inspiration. And this is also part of what I was talking about earlier in the not listening to other artists. If I know that I'm wanting to sing and I want to create, if I'm listening to music all the time, I'm just inputting. I'm just getting input. But when I stop that and I maybe go for a walk, or if I'm driving especially, I'll just kind of have these creative spurts. I don't even know what to call it. It's like just like a stroke of, creative genius, right? Where something will just come to my head, a melody or words or both. Sometimes it's a little bit of one, a little bit of the other, and I'll have to record myself. Like I have hundreds of voice notes, and that's where it's like I have to get into the work part of it, right? I can have all the inspiration all day long. I have all these little tunes and melodies and things like that, but in order to actually get it out there, I have to put in the work of recording it and then sending it to the producer so they can put it on the track. And that's all on me, right? So that's probably the most applicable example in my personal life, right? Because for me, it's really just, I just kind of have these little sparks of creativity. I don't know how else to put it. That's probably,
that makes perfect sense. Honestly, describing it as those sparks of creativity, I totally get that, because I think of myself as an operator, which is that I try to operate within defined metrics and parameters and do the absolute best that I can in pushing to the absolute edge of that box that I want to operate inside of, as opposed to what you're talking about. It's these like flashes of creativity that just come. And when they happen, you like you said, when you write all those voice notes, it's recording all that creativity and that innovation. And then I also think you had a really great line there where you're talking about when it comes to musicality, everyone has their different instrument where you actually express your creativity. I've played a little bit of guitar and bass guitar for jazz band growing up, and I always colored inside the lines, so to speak. So whenever I was playing, I tried to think of myself, am I matching this person? Am I getting to their 100%? When you talk about like finding your instrument, for you, it's your voice. And then a good buddy of ours in the chat right now, Mr. Angry Twinkie, it's like, I know that his voice is his guitar, because even like the small riffs that he plays that I've heard, it strikes my brain as this is not me hearing music that has been previously prepared. This is him expressing himself and his creative ideas. This is just his instrument to do it.
Oh yeah. Dude, Twinkie's got some good ass riffs, bro.
Twinkie's great. He shreds.
Bro, I was gonna ask you, SJ, when you were describing listening to other musicians versus coming up with your own music yourself, would you say that it's like, and this is my own like little personal interpretation, so I could be totally off here. Would you say it's kind of like you got like a music bucket in your brain, and when you're listening to other other artists and things, they're the ones that are filling up that bucket. And then like the music bucket's full, and so you're like, all right, sweet, I got my full music bucket. And then when you go without listening to other artists and things, it's like, oh shit, this music bucket's empty. And you start being like, coming up with your own little stuff and put your own little ideas into that music bucket. Would that be an accurate analogy?
Yeah, I love that. That's brilliant. That's a great analogy, and I feel like that's very true. Very true. And it can be that's the thing is that it's, for me, it's not like I listen to a certain kind of artist and then try to replicate them either, because most of what I come up with is not like anything I listen to most of the time.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, fill in my own bucket.
I wonder, so like that's another thing that Richard talks about, and you had mentioned this in our previous interview with you about building your own brand as opposed to like riding the coattails of someone else's brand. You used to be known like you weren't always a wild SJ. You used to be like what, Survivalist SJ or SJ SciVive, something like that.
Yeah, SciVive.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so that's the next topic that I want to kind of break into, and I'll go ahead and let you take this one off the rip here. But one of the things that is important is, and I guess we kind of mentioned this earlier on in the stream, is building your own brand. And the first step of building your own brand is, like I had said earlier about the young person versus the old person. The younger people need to figure out like what kind of information exists out there, and then once they gather up enough information and they realize how all these little ingredients and parts and pieces can all come together, then they can like stop looking at other people's creations and tinker around and make their own things. What do you think? Like as far as brand building goes, what is a good what's a good starting point for the folks at home when they want to come up with what they would like the world to perceive as their brand or their identity or something like that to be? Where would folks benefit the most starting from when they're determining what that trajectory is going to be in their life? Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, so just based on SciVive, there's a couple different things, and this is what I applied to my own brand. And one of them was, and it's funny because Richard mentions how he didn't follow his own rules, which he's very aware of, like he's like, I know that there are things that I could have done better, especially when it comes to SciVive itself, like the name. So that's a perfect example, right? It should be spellable, right? You shouldn't have to spell whatever your brand name is, right? And one of you had said early, the KISS method, right? Like keep it simple. You need to keep your brand simple and have it try to make it relatable, and like in terms of whatever it is you're branding, right? Like it should be, try to be clever with it, right? Try to use something that is going to give recognition to what it is you're branding. And then lastly, and this was something I stole from SciVive, was the numeric or closest to the alphabet part, the beginning of the alphabet. If you use a number in your brand, or you use the letter A, hence a wild SJ, you will usually show up first on lists. And that's happened multiple times for me. So those are just real simple, easy little tricks. And that's why I love SciVive, because there's so much of that in there. Like it's just all these little tricks of the trade that you can apply to, whatever it is you're doing in your daily life.
SJ, are you telling me that I need to do a rebrand for my name?
Zenith.
I think that there's also something to be said about like letters that are not normally used, like X, or like starting with X. Usually it ends with X, right?
Right.
Or starting
X, Q, and Z.
Yeah. Yep.
Like throw that Z in there.
Look,
that could set you apart as well, right? That's also, something to think about.
Look, I'm a nerd, and I pulled all my ideas pretty much from celestial navigation and some nautical stuff. So it was either Zenith or Azimuth, which is also AZ. So you're technically an A, but you hamstring yourself with the second letter, which is, again, a Z. I don't know if there's a theme here, but I'm just saying that's where I pulled my ideas from.
That I have a relatable thing for that, Zenith. Whenever, so I've already pre-decided like that my firstborn son, he's got to be named Will after me, but my firstborn daughter is going to be named Aileron after like the flaps on a
I see you over there. I see you.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool name. I can't remember where I first heard that. I think my flying buddy was like, yeah. So I like pulled the thing and like the ailerons, and I was like, what? That's a cool name. I like that. And it's spelled nifty too. So maybe it's not good for branding as far as like spelling goes, but like, yeah, I think SJ, you were talking about like the spelling and misspelling things. I want to say I heard Richard talk about like that's why Hex was called Hex, is because it's just super simple, real sticky branding. 3 letters, can't be misspelled. Everyone knows what a hexagon is. Like you'll see it everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like I tell you what, like every time I see a hexagon somewhere, I'm thinking like, oh yeah, cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Staked out.
Why pink
Staked
and
out
orange,
for
though?
15 years.
Yep.
What's that? Pink and orange? Oh, pink and orange? I thought it had to do with the colors that Instagram's logo. And I mean it is good colorings, but it matches up with Instagram's logo fucking perfectly. And I don't know if Instagram did that or I don't know which came first, the Hex or the Insta. I would imagine Instagram came first.
So I got a bit of a fun fact on this one.
Yeah, what's up?
So the color magenta does not physically exist. It is it is something that is created when you go across and back around the color spectrum, because on each end you have purple and you also have red. So when you kind of go between them, you get either lavender, or if you go in the computer generated space, you end up getting that super bright pink magenta. That is where that exists. So it's this weird color that like strikes your brain differently. But also this also just shows like the genius of why Richard named the things that he did, and also why they're colored the way that they did. So not just because it's that, but when you go back to the 3-letter word thing, there are 1,340 valid 3-letter words in the English language. So trying to capture one of them as your URL for a website is very difficult, and it's probably rather expensive to do. So if you can get one of those, it's super easy to remember, super easy to type in, and that is like that mental real estate that's hard to capture. And once it's sold, it's gone forever.
Yep. I think he's got the misspelling Hex, HECKS. I'm pretty sure he has that one, that URL as well. I wanted to say he was bragging about that. Like, go ahead and try and misspell it. I got that one too on one of his streams. Bro, I just drove past like a gas station and like the price of diesel was $3.69, and I was like, man, I just see this shit everywhere.
There it is.
Well, I think aileron's a fine branding name, because if she ever wants to like shorten it, people can always just call her Ron.
Yes, that's true. My daughter Ron. Ron Burgundy. That's where my mind goes immediately. Oh shoot. Yo, Mrs. McGetta, if you wouldn't mind, have you caught some chats yet for us to do another round of chat shoutouts? And also Zenith, if you're ready to do so, is this something that we are at a good spot for doing?
Yeah, we were just talking about in the private chat. So.
Oh, sweet, excellent. Well, let's go ahead and do some chat shoutouts. Thank you again for all the folks in the chats. Remember, guys, click the link in the description below, the link to join our Telegram, the DGen Roundtable community chat. You guys can get down in there. Also, if you want to join the book club, it's t.me/DGen Book Club, all one word. So t.me/DGen Book Club. And then you guys can chill out in the chats and see all of my sporadic notes and link postings and all the crazy things that we do and talk about, and it's got the anthology of all of our book club streams and everything like that. So hop on into the chats, hop on into our Telegram community. It's free for now. It's not always going to be free. At some point, we have to put some sort of paywall on it to kind of stop the uninteresting people from shitting up our chat and everything. But for now, it's free while the going's still good. And that's actually really well with one of the things that Richard talks about, where it's like the smaller a group of people is, the more wise they are, and then the larger a crowd gets, the stupider they get. So we don't want to turn into a nice, big, huge, crazy, large Telegram community where everyone's just like posting silly memes and like you can't keep up with a chat and there's like 20,000 messages in one day. We don't want none of that. So join our DGen Roundtable Telegram, like the video, comment, and Mr. Zenith, if you wouldn't mind, let's go ahead and give these folks that are watching us live some shout outs, if you please.
Will do. It looks like we have some folks from the beginning of the show that hopped in after we did our first round. First of all, we got Centurion 54X. Good to see you, my man. Glad you make it. Glad to always have you here. You are one of the usual suspects, and we're always happy to have you on a book club. Next up, we got Trey Sims. BBC checking in. Sup, gang? The DEI hire is here. Well, we don't hire for that around here, but we are still glad you are here, good sir.
Yo, Dre
Next
has
up,
some,
we got Yellowtail.
good stuff.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Dre.
I was just gonna shout him out.
Dre's a long time friend of the channel. We are always happy to have him show up, and he's very comical, I will say. Next up, we got Yellowtail. He says, my professor told me after calculus, you could just use your calculator. That is very accurate, because I can attest that after like Calc 1, a lot of it becomes, can you just understand the concept, set up the problem correctly, and then after that, put it in the computer. It's, you got to get the setup right, and then after that, just let the machine do the crunching, because it is not worth your time. I bet Sam can probably attest to that. All right, next up, we got Brendan from DGen Roundtable. He says, our current education system is awful. One of the reasons I was homeschooling, can excel at your own pace in each subject. You are, I would argue, you're entirely correct, my friend. That makes total sense. And having homeschooling or pod learning with just a handful of other homeschoolers, it makes sense if you can keep that smaller group going the same pace, which is faster than the public. Similar to what Will said, which is that the IQ of a larger group is lower than the IQ of a smaller group. Theoretically, I mean, we're not going to get full into normal distributions on IQ here, but we'll keep it going. Tam, the best cheerleader in the crypto space. We are super happy to have you as always. She says that she is loving the conversation. Much appreciated. We're going to try to keep it going and keep it high quality for everybody at home, because that's what we try to do here. Next up, good friend of the channel, Moonpilled Rational Optics. What is up, D-Gens? Good to see you, sir. By the way, Moonpilled, I'm drinking what is my favorite whiskey, which is the Woodford Reserve. That's what I got going on. I know Nate probably has that handle of Tito's he's working on, so... Oh, we have something different. We have the ice. Okay. I am the D-Gen tonight, with that said. Oh, we got Brown, a.k.a. Farmer J, in the chat. He says, my dirt is valuable. Yes, sir. Farmers do value that dirt, and I bet you value yours. Moondog, love and light.
Oh,
and you're still killing me with all these. We have
That's
a
part of
yen, @ pound, CL scale pirate flag.
Bro,
I think
Moondog
that's for
takes
USG.
that.
I don't know what that
He
one
takes
is.
that. What's that branding of using the unique letters and words and everything. Like he maxes that out, and that's really good, because we'll never forget about Moondog using essentially webdings for his name and everything. So shout out to you, bro. I met Moondog up here in Dallas a while back when we did an unofficial Hex meetup. It was super fun and awesome.
I just want to say
Go
really
ahead.
quick, I love how half of his quote unquote letters are like currency symbols.
Yeah, the man uses so many symbols and emojis that sometimes YouTube can't even keep up with them. I fully understand that, like, I am someone that was effectively raised by like boomers and Gen Xers, so I'm effectively an old soul, but I know that the generation that comes behind me is going to be the Gen Z and the Alpha and the Zoomers that talk in the emojis and everything. And I am just, there's going to be a point where one day I just am unable to keep up. And that's the time when that's the time to pass the torch. That's when you're like, all right, you take it from here, brother.
Yeah, I give up on communication at that point in time. I'm good.
True. All right, Will, I did pick out one last chat to kick us off into what I think is a good topic for the next one, which is coming from Tam.
Excellent.
She says that Richard Hart teaches us that analogies are the best tools for understanding. Completely agree. And in particular, in this chapter in mind, Richard Hart talks about one of the best ways to teach people is through stories. By teaching through stories instead of just pure memorization and stats and facts, you trade depth for emotional connection, which is going to keep you going much longer and have much better retention. So that's what I got. Will, what do you think about that?
Bro, that's a good kickoff, using analogies to teach things, because and another thing that he talks about that he speaks about on that subject is that normally the people who are going to be able to understand the analogies correctly, they're the same type of people who would have been able to come up on them like come up with the same analogies on their own. They just like didn't think of it first. So like if you're using an analogy to explain something to someone, they'll either get it and it'll be like, awesome, sweet, we got good communication, we're on the same level, or they won't get it, and then you have to like revert to a different level of communication to teach them things. And I'd called Sam up earlier today, and I'd like to share with him this fun, because what I've been re-listening to SciVive Chapter 1 basically on a loop this entire week. So just like listening over and over and over and over again. And so like I've got a lot of these things written down, or not written down, but just like fused into my memory. And one of the things that stuck out was when he was talking about costly signals and like the example that he gave about like Google and everything, and like how animals out in the wild, like they have to use costly signals in order to like attract a mate, like proof of basically just like, hey, look, like I'm a peacock, I've got this big fancy feather system that like will slow me down like when I'm trying to run away from predators. But like the proof that I'm a good, you know, male peacock to mate with is like I've got this gigantic handicap and I can still survive and everything. So it's like that was one of my favorite analogies, and it made me think of, as a matter of fact, that that human beings, they actually use cryptocurrency type things when they decide to pair bond. And this is my analogy: a wedding ring, right? So when a man goes out and buys a wedding ring for his wife, that is both proof of work and it's proof of stake. What do you guys think? Should I dive into it?
The wedding
or does that make
proof
sense?
of stake.
It's proof of stake because like if you break the contract, or if you turn out bad blocks or whatever, right? Then the woman keeps the wedding ring and she goes and sells it and makes a lot of money, or whatever the heck. And it's also proof of work because it's like generally wedding rings are expensive, and so like having that costly signal sort of thing is like, oh hey, yeah, I can throw away this money on some insignificant, you know, shiny rock on a piece of metal or whatever. So like the traditional wedding ring, I thought, and this is just my own 2 cents, and I came up with this literally today while I was like forklifting some stuff around. I'm like, oh my god, dude, wedding rings are fucking proof of work and proof of stake. And I want to know what your guys' thoughts are on that. If it's a silly analogy or if it is accurate at all.
I got my woman a ring pop for her ring.
No kidding.
So is that expensive? She could take that out. we sell that for at least like 5 cents, a whole nickel, baby.
You got her the
oh my god
diamond ring.
That's fucking awesome.
Will, in your analogy,
awesome.
does that mean that
Context.
taxes are gas fees?
Yes.
Yes, I mean they're
Alright,
technically
fair
tax
enough.
write-offs, right? So,
Sure.
in a sense.
Yep.
I gotta say though, Will, like
Taxes are
even
gas
if
fees.
analogies aren't 100%, because if you look up the history of wedding rings, specifically diamonds, before engagement in wedding rings, diamonds were actually pretty useless outside of just industrial use. But it was the idea of wedding rings and marketing that really created the idea of you get this one very large expensive thing to show to the woman that you are providing value and whatnot. So that might be separate of your analogy, but your analogy makes sense. And I got to say, there is a person in the chat who has a great analogy quote. Mrs. Producer, can we please pull up Moondogs? He said, I know you can't see the chats here, Will, but he says, Britta, you don't know what an analogy is. And the guy says, yes, I do. It's a thought with another thought's hat on.
I love that. That's great. Actually, getting back over to analogies, that's something that I've tried to, I've had to learn how to communicate, you know, because originally, like I could learn something, but I could never find the words to be able to communicate it properly. And people would always get confused. So I thought to myself, you know what? And then not only that, but also what my brain kind of thinks of is there's a lot of this going on in my brain. And I'm like, okay, so what does this mean? And I always ask myself the question, you know, what does it mean? And I say, okay, let's dumb this down to be a very simplistic answer. Because if you get overly complicated, you start losing people. And the most simplistic answers tend to be things that people experience in daily life, which would be an analogy, right? And so that's kind of the process of how I've learned to try and communicate nowadays.
That makes perfect sense. On the flip side of using analogies to simplify things, here's actually one of the quotes from later on in the chapter, which is that overly simplistic understanding is more dangerous than overly complex. So this seems like one of those, this seems like a bit of a square you have to circle somehow. What I mean by that is that Richard Hart in the book talks about how using storytelling and analogies is a great way to teach people in what his opinion is better than the conventional method. However, at the same time, he also talks about later on that when it comes to the understanding side of the house, is that if you oversimplify the understanding, that is more dangerous than overcomplicating it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because then people can like misinterpret the shit and then just go off and do all sorts of other things. I think he was talking about that a little bit too, like when he got to the religious portion of the mind chapter, where he was speaking about, or no, I think he might have been quoting someone else talking about like how like getting a bad man to do a bad thing is really easy, but getting a good person to do a bad thing
is going to require
you need
some
religion. Yeah, and just like you can like when a good person misinterprets something, like some sort of simple ideology or ism or truth or what they perceive to be a truth, right? Like then you get things like extremist terrorism or like the Crusades, or insert whatever like apocryphal religiously based human extravaganza that's gone on throughout history, like people just being super duper simple and not thinking or misunderstanding some things and just going and doing some really heinous shit or something like that. It is very important
with
to
people though when people start doing that, what happens is they take that simple explanation about a complicated subject. And they start trying to, they're like, okay, this is nice and simple. So what I can do is I can fit that into my beliefs.
Yeah.
And then they try and twist it. And so that there is just intent. It doesn't really have to do with the fact that it's like a simple answer. That's just evil intent generally.
Yeah. So like behind every like ideological suicide bomber, there's like some mastermind guy who's like, hey, I need these people like killed some way, somehow. And so I'm just going to like spew out some dogma stuff to some poor fool who doesn't know any better, and like get him to do my dirty work for me. Is that what you're kind of sort of saying there?
Yeah. Yep. And that also starts going down the path of that's where someone who takes something simple like remakes it into complicated to then simplify it again down into what people are gonna be like, yeah, I believe in that.
Yeah, but like a bastardized version of what it should be.
Exactly.
Almost.
Yeah, and that's just that.
I'm going to keep going back to this analogy myself, which is that Richard Hart, in my opinion, writes in a manner in which he creates a bunch of circles that have to be squared, which is that there's one idea that is in balance or almost contrast to another. And the explanation of the writing is to try to bridge you from one idea to the other and understand how you get there. In the religion one, if I remember correctly, the religion aspect is brought up after the fact that he brings up the idea of which knowledge to pursue. And the knowledge to pursue is the knowledge that which is the consensus of the winners. What he means by that is that the best knowledge, theoretically, in the open marketplace of ideas is the one that's going to come out on top. So therefore, starting at the premise that the idea that comes out on top is typically the best idea or the one that is most suited to the proliferation of the human race, then that means that when you have an existence and proliferation of all the different religions, theoretically you could derive the idea that because all these religions keep persisting and spreading, that means that they are correct. However, that is in direct contrast to each other because it's not a singular religion or even sect of religions. It is a wide variety of them. And this is the case where it's like if you try to focus on that the winning and surviving idea is the correct one, it's in direct contrast to the idea that multiple different religions have sprung up. And he even goes one step further after this and says that religion is not per se an exact furthering or of affirmation of a correct idea, but it is something that is going to spring up even if you got rid of all of them all at once. It is something that is in human nature, and it is something that is going to keep coming up. So this almost feels like one of those specific topics that gets separated out a little bit. And again, it is the circle that he tries to square. It's the idea that is in contrast to another, but there is an explanation to split them apart and allow them to exist simultaneously.
Yeah. Well, like the reason, like the big reason that religion propagates so well is it's just like it amounts to shared stories between cultures and stuff, right? So the more people that believe the same story, like he was saying in the book, the more people that believe the same thing, the more likely they are to cooperate with each other. And when they cooperate, they are more competitive and they're more effective as a unit than as like the individual sum of the parts and everything like that. So like religions and religious, or like any sort of ideology or tribalism or shared story system, like will make a group of people more effective, more so than like the lack thereof. And that's why they'll always propagate, and that's why there will always be many of them. And like where none exists, some will spring up out of just basic, competition necessity or something along those lines. Like, don't get me wrong, I still think that religion is beautiful because it does all sorts of like cool things for our society. However, like it's not necessarily I think it's like beautiful in concept, just me personally. I don't know if I want to get too deep into the theology stuff here, but that's my own personal take on it. And I think he does a very good job of describing like at least the mechanics and the functionality behind it all. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts?
I want to get SJ's thoughts on this one. I saw you nodding along for a lot of stuff. Do you disagree with any of the points that we brought up?
No, I agree a lot with most of that. I mean, I think part of the reason Richard, because to me, a lot of what SciVive is, aside from him, giving advice in general, is also, you can see from studying this book over and over again, and like, having what little interaction I've had with Richard and watching his videos and things like that, I see someone who is working with these ideas and working through them to create what he wants to see in the world. And knowing the little bit that I know about Richard's greater vision, and if you watch a lot of his videos and pay attention to what he's saying, and even in his tweets, you'll know, and I say this constantly because I think a lot of people forget and a lot of people don't realize, crypto, to me, from what I see, crypto is just the beginning for Richard. Crypto is a stepping stone to a greater greatness that he wants to create in the world. And he has mentioned Hexaco. He's mentioned a nation state. I don't think that's off his roadmap. I just think it's taken a back burner, to everything else that's going on with what's happening in Hex and Pulse Chain right now. So I know that that's something that I believe he ultimately wants to see happen. And the religion aspect of it in ways will allow that to move forward easier, because again, whatever your take is on religion, right? Being a religion gives you certain rights and certain footholds in different places, right? You can act differently as an entity if you're a religious entity. So I think that is part of what Richard was exploring through religion in SciVive, and maybe in part what we may see, who knows, in the future in terms of where he's wanting to take all of this and move forward with it.
So you're talking about like legal rights and things.
Mm-hmm. And not financial. A lot of people, I've brought this up a little bit here and there, and people are like, oh, the tax benefit. I'm like, Richard doesn't need the tax breaks.
Probably doesn't care about taxes.
No, it's in part, being able to defend yourself as an entity if you're a religious entity. Freedom of speech, right? I think you have a little bit more freedom of speech sometimes if whatever it is you're doing is tied to a religion. So.
Additionally, when it comes to Richard's idea, or the idea that he's thrown out there of creating a nation state, tax breaks, not a nation does it make. What I mean is that, like, you can give people tax breaks, but that is not a reason for the foundation of a nation. Right. And I think when you start talking about the different ideas of like freedom of speech and freedom of movement, like our friend Captain Land in the chat, that's where you start getting toward those ideas and principles that you can actually centralize people around and galvanize an actual group towards an objective. Because if you're just looking to give people tax breaks, that's a very, very weak core, and you can pull 1,000 different directions of where to go from there.
Yeah.
You can think of Hexaco as the new American America.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah.
Named after Mexico. With a play on words.
Maybe there's a deeper meaning there. I don't know what
That
it
could
is,
be.
but
Yeah. That would be
All
very
I know is
interesting.
that as soon as Pulse Chain hits $1, then Jeff is going to buy his own island. He's going to call it Hexaco, and we are all invited.
Excellent.
Oh my God. That's oh shit. That's one of the things he talks about is like people who like spend their time planning on buying the islands are not afforded the like no disrespect to Jeff or anything, but it's just like people who spend their time like, you know, wondering what's
we lost
biggest
Will
man.
on
It's
the
like
thought.
no, fucking solve the problem of becoming the world's biggest man. Don't be buying the clothes, you know. It's like it's the people who don't focus on the problem of like, man, what island am I going to buy when I'm rich? And instead they focus on like, what are the things that need fixing in the world? And then they go and do that. It's like then they are like by the virtue of
state. That's what needs fixing. We need a
Yeah.
we need a state. So Jeff's going to fix
We need real estate.
our problem by providing an
Well,
island.
if you buy land, then that means that you're like acquiring it from somebody through some sort of like means of purchase. So is it really yours?
Yes.
If you buy it from
It is.
someone else?
Especially if
who's the
especially
guy
if
who's
you
who's the
mean
guy
independence.
who has the deed? Who's the guy who like how
Will, you were going full
and then I say
robot
like,
on
all
us.
right,
However,
Canada, I'm not. Oh no.
We just lost the
Go
last
ahead.
10 seconds from you.
Yeah, all I heard is all right, Canada.
Okay. Am I back? Am I back?
So long
You are
story short,
back.
Will, this is how it works, right? So
All
whoever
right.
has the most guns, whoever has the most power gets to say the rights. Now, if we had only like say three states out of the entire globe, then we would run into a lot of problems. Hence why there's been a lot of nation states that have been allowed to basically stick to what they already have. So technically speaking, what you could do is you could buy a house, have your land, and then declare independence, right? From whatever country you're in. Here's the problem. As soon as the government comes by and says no, and then you pull out, you're going to have to do what? You're going to have to try and force them away from you. The only way to do that is through the only means that humans know, physical violence. So you pull out your gun and then they pull out a tank.
Nate, I think you're absolutely correct when it comes
Yeah.
to the might makes right argument for ownership. But if you want to get very John Locke with it, it's the idea that ownership comes from when you mixed your sweat and blood with the land. Only then does the ownership manifest. Which is that once you cultivate it into being something greater than it was, at that point you've deviated from natural law and you've gone to private ownership. But at the same time, those ideas are both in
what you can
conflict.
kill.
Also, yep, Chronicles of Riddick, you keep what you kill.
Yes, you keep what you kill. If you don't go and earn it, if you don't pay the iron price, and if you can't defend it and someone takes it from you, then by rule of might, you do not have it. You know, if somebody breaks into your house and kills you and steals your goodies, then it doesn't matter how like what country you're a part of. It doesn't matter what, you know, how cool your police force is or how many deeds of ownership or how much money you spent like buying all that stuff. Like the only thing that you have in this world is the stuff that you secure for yourself. You know, and like there's all sorts of like ethics and morality that goes into it. And I'm not saying that might makes right, but like, but the point is, what was that?
No, never mind.
I was just so the point that I was trying to make is that like it's not necessarily ethical to go around and you know take things and do stuff and whatever. But like if somebody purchases an island, then that means that like somebody else owned it and there's some sort of like deed of so perhaps I'm probably just getting too deep and nitty gritty into the weeds here, and I'm just gonna capitulate.
I think SJ has something that'll bring us back down to earth a little bit. What you got?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so we were kind of, we started all this kind of going down the analogy rabbit hole, right? Which Richard used.
Oh, that's right.
And
Correct.
that's kind of what he is. I think he's really good at it. And one of the things I love about SciVive is that every time I listen to it and re-listen to it, there's something else. There's some new nugget that I hear. And I heard this one today and I thought, wow, I can't believe I didn't. And I looked back because I have a list of all my favorite quotes, which I did the whole year, the 365, actually I did 369 SciVive quotes. And I looked back to see if this was on there and it wasn't. And I was shocked because not only because I'm listening to this and I love it, but I'm a hippie and a tree hugger. And I've been an organic farmer by trade in the past. So just for me to have not like pulled this one out at first, I was shocked. So I'm going to read this little bit where he talks about the Helsinki bus station, where it's like you come into this world and you do things and then you go to a college and that puts you on the bus. And then you can kind of stay in your city, right? Or you can keep taking the bus out of your city. And now there's all these new and different stops. And then he brings up this new analogy. And I'm going to read this little end of this paragraph. He says, that divergence is just like a tree. A tree has a trunk and then it has many branches. Those branches quite literally sprout out into space 3-dimensionally. Why do they do that? The only reason that branches on a tree behave like this is because that's where the light is. The light isn't where you started. There is something else already there absorbing the light. There's a leaf in the way. Thus, you don't get any light if you stay there. And he says, the education system is the same way. Perhaps this tree idea is better. SciVive just invented it right before your eyes. And that really struck me. He's relating it to the education system, but I just think in general, as an analogy, that's so beautiful. Because, there's the whole tree, the seed is in the dark and then we break out of the ground, out of the darkness. But then you have to continue to grow away from the darkness. You have to continue to grow towards the light because what's behind you is already absorbing the light that's there. You have to get the light that's ahead of you. So I just wanted to bring that one up because that really struck me hard. And I was like, I need to like frame that one and put that on a wall for sure. Or make a little, maybe I'll make a meme of it. Or an icon.
I like that. I remember that one. That was another good one. I'm glad that you reminded me of that because I had faded towards the back of my active memory. That is a good one.
Yeah.
You like the branch that chases the light.
Yeah, and ultimately, when you're thinking about it, that the beauty of that analogy, what Captain Land here put on, he said, yes, so the lesson is, do we count on someone extending options to us, or do we find the answers ourselves, right? And I think that is absolutely imperative, that now, in able to live a good life, you really need to figure out exactly what it is that you want to do in life, right? And so, yeah, no, I love the way that he said that about the branch because you're going out seeking your own sunlight. So,
I'm a leaf on the wind.
When it comes to Captain Land's analogy there, I think it's one of those things where you got to square the circle. It's a little bit of both. In the beginning, you're looking for all the things that other people have extended to you, such as like previous knowledge and the shoulders of giants that you currently stand on, which is that we're not having to reinvent the wheel. People have already invented a lot of stuff for us. So grasp all the things that you can right now. Once you start getting towards the idea of that you're pushing the boundaries of knowledge, then yeah, that's where the thing is like you've now moved around the leaves that are in your way and you're chasing the light, which is either truth or knowledge or things yet to be discovered. So I guess in my mind, that's kind of how I think about that whole thing. But that's a damn good analogy. I like that a lot, SJ.
Yeah, I think it's one of my favorites now.
Mrs. McGettit, do you have anything on this subject? I'm gonna let you weigh in here, and then Sam, you as well, if you've got anything, and then I'm gonna transition us over to talking about decisions.
Take us to decisions. I'm good.
I'm sorry, but on what subject? Analogies or?
Yeah, do you have any thoughts on the stuff that we were covering? I wanted to give you a moment to chime in here before I totally redirect the conversation somewhere else.
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, folks. Well, we're going to do a super hard transition right on over into how to make decisions. And this is going to be our final little topic here. before we close out the show. But one of the other more important things that Richard covers in SciVive is decision making, and this is something that I think a lot of folks struggle with. I personally see everything in life as having three options when it comes to making a decision. You can choose like a hard yes, you could choose a hard no, or you could choose not to decide, which usually like ends up as a default, like the same answer is like a default no or something like that. But the analogy, like to kind of sort of dovetail off of the analogy topic of conversation, the analogy that he gives in here that I had never really thought about was, he says, if you're having trouble making decisions about things, then what you need to do is you need to flip a coin. And whether the coin lands like heads or tails on the thing that you're thinking about doing, if you have the urge to flip the coin again, then you've already made the decision. And when I heard that, it got me thinking, like, man, a lot of my peers and like folks that are my age and people that I've interacted with in the past and stuff, like a lot of people don't really know how to do good decision making process. And so what I want to ask the panel is, how do you guys make decisions? And further like going into that is like, what are like the considerations of things that you take in before you make an important decision? How often do you make decisions? Do you do a lot of thinking and ruminating? I think that's the right word. Do you do a lot of thinking, a lot of considering of things, or do you just like say, snap, let's go, let's get things? Like what does your decision making tree look like, and what is the sort of things that influence your guys' decision making process?
I'm gonna pop in here real quick. So there's a book, I think it's called Buy Your Time Back, and one of the things he talks about in that book is the concepts of like, there's basically 5 different types of people who like make decisions. And one of the types that I think I am, there's the kind of, and it's like the 5 ways you make decisions or make mistakes when you make decisions. And
can you cover the 5 before you talk about which one you are? I don't want to cut you off too much, but I want to know what the options are, if you don't mind.
Probably not, because I was only concerned with the one that solves my problem.
Okay, that's fine. Go ahead and jump right into it then. No sweat.
So the type that I was, or that I think I am, is the kind of person who, when looking to make a decision, the first thing that seems like it might solve my problem, I just snap and make that decision, which isn't always the best decision. It can be a bad idea because like it may not be the best deal or whatever, and like, yeah, maybe it's a good 80% solution or whatever, but like, so like I will say I noticed that's a default decision-making process for myself. If I need to basically like do something like find a car insurance, right? If I Google car insurance and I'm like, oh, this one popped up, great, I want to get it, boom, 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 got it, solved the problem, done, I'm on to the next thing. Like that's not necessarily the best way to do that. So that's like my default. And I think everybody has like a style like that. I think you go read the book or find out what those 5 types are or whatever. See what like default position you might already have. And then from there, you should think about like, well, how should I be making my decisions? And I think like running decisions by other people who have your best interests in mind is a great way to basically like fact check yourself. But otherwise, if you're going to make like really big, important decisions, then you should probably just be asking your cat. Like I've got a cat. He's really wise. His name is Mr. Pumpkin. And that's who I go to. So that's what I have to say about that.
You said the name of the book is Buy Your Time Back, correct?
I believe, yeah. Dan Martell, Buy Your Time Back. I think it was in that book.
Sweet. Can you send that to me over in Telegram, and I'll add it to our recommended reading list?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. That's a good. I personally like that.
I don't mean to. Will.
No, go ahead, Zenith. Go ahead. That's all I had.
I know you can't see the comments, but we just pull one up. Mrs. Producer, if we can pull up Captain Land's comment as well. He answered your question as well. He says that I base a decision on past experiences and then the best outcome coupled with the risk factor attached to the weight of wreckage, aka the severity of the outcome. So,
ooh, this guy uses a matrix. I like it.
He does. In particular, I believe he is talking about probability weighted based risk management. What that means is that you multiply the probability of something happening, you multiply that against the severity of the outcome. which means that if you have a super dire outcome, but there's like a 0.0001% chance of it happening, the overall risk is rather low. However, if you have a like 90% guaranteed outcome and the downside of it is like 0.5 in your scale or whatever, then that means that it's realistically like 0.45. So there's a 45% downside, so to speak. This is a very engineering-minded or strategically-minded way of thinking. I was going to piggyback off this one and say that there's kind of two ways to make decision-making, in my opinion. One is that you can try to be entirely, correct me if I get the sides of the brain wrong here, but it is the right side of the brain, which is the logic side, and the left side, which is the feeling side. So if you go right side here, you go to matrices and calculations and decisions, and that's how you can do that. At the end of the day, these still have to be oriented at a goal and an outcome or an overarching strategy here, but that's how you create those values and those numbers, and you can drive that direction. On the other side, this is a quote from one of my good buddies, which is that when you try to make a decision, you flip a coin, and if you don't like the way that coin feels, that's what you tell yourself. It's not about the coin flip. It's about how you feel about the coin flip, and that's where the gut is. That's where that gut decision comes in, and that gut feeling is that when you're presenting with the thing and you immediately like whinge and you say, "Ugh," or "I don't wanna," then that means that you instinctively knew what you wanted to do all along, even if it's in that negative oppositional light, the inverse, if you will, which is another thing that Richard Hart talks about in the chapter, which is that when you focus on certain things, you're instead focusing on the inverse. What he means by that is don't focus on being fat, focus on being fit. So in this case, you're focusing on the decision that you don't want to figure out the decision that you do want.
Which, by the way, I just want to real quick say it's actually flip. So Zenith, when it's logic, it's left.
It's the right. Okay, thank you. Logic is left. Right is R for creative.
Art, imagination, all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's actually the technicals is the right, puts you in the clouds. The left keeps you grounded.
Much appreciated, Nate. That's why we keep you here. You keep me on my toes and keep me correct.
Good catch.
Much appreciated, brother.
I had thought in my head, I was like, this something sounds a little bit odd. I'm glad that you caught that, Nate, because I would have totally just been like, oh, I guess I had it wrong this whole time.
Yeah.
I think the thing is that like your brain, you have the optical nerve or whatever, the connection where it actually crosses, where it's like if you are left brain dominant, you're going to be right. If you're left brain dominant, you are going to be physically right hand dominant. And then oppositionally, it's like the other way, allegedly.
Huh.
Yeah, that is one of those things. I know SJ wanted to talk on this subject though. So
yeah, just
in
quickly,
here.
I mean, Sam touched on this, but I often will. I'm one of those phone a friend people for sure. Like I believe that there's wisdom in, having a great counsel around you. And I feel very fortunate these days that I've got a lot of really great human beings in my life that I can reach out to and, kind of talk with. And I've got, everyone from people that I've just met within the last couple years within this community to, those diehard friends of mine that have known me my whole life. So I like getting that perspective, right? Where I'll call my bestie and get her perspective because she's seen me go through all of these changes and things, the entirety of our lives. And then, ask the perspective of someone like, like RG, who I know pretty well from, the tour and things is, hey, like, what do you see in this situation? And, what you know of me, like, how do you think this would work out? And the same goes for just like everything from large decisions to, for me, even for just items that I buy, because I'm so aware now of where my money goes. I don't like wasting things. I don't like buying shit that's just going to break. So I take other people's opinions. That's why I like ratings, right? Amazon rating system. I love it. And I read through those. Like I want to know in the comments, like, what has worked well, what doesn't work well. Like, does this zipper fall off of this thing, So I think that there is wisdom in counsel, but also, and again, it kind of depends on what the decision is. You got to trust your gut, right? Like I feel like, we have intuition for a reason, and there is that little still small voice inside your head, whatever you want to call it. I think that there's something to that. And, even if people are telling you, yes, you should or shouldn't do this, it really kind of is going to come down to, you know, asking your cat about it, and, you know, really asking yourself, like finding out like deep down within your heart, like, does this feel right? And some people may think that's kind of like woo and, you know, not very logic brained, right? But I do believe that there is something to that, and that we have that intuitive gut feeling for a reason, for sure. Also, Will, is that a ship's wheel? Are you driving?
Yes, it is.
What?
This is my truck.
I want one.
Dead serious.
I need a new wheel for the bus. I'm gonna need. Oh no!
I pushed the wrong button.
Did he just unmute? Did he permanently mute himself? Is that what just happened?
And real quick, guys, on that note, I've got to get going because I've got to miss Maget it for the effing hangout. So
absolutely. Before
Yes,
you
ma'am.
go, SJ, where can the people find you at?
I am A Wild SJ all over the place. Every social is the same, A Wild SJ. And right now, a little shameless self-promotion, Utah, April 13th. Come see us. Pulse Chain Tour is going to be there. And then May 4th. May the 4th be with you in Canada. We're going to Vancouver. So those two places are our next stops on the Pulse Chain Tour, and I would love to see you there. Thank you so much for having me, DJ Roundtable. I love you guys.
Real quick,
Love
before
you
you
as
leave,
well.
I
By
love
the way,
that.
where SJ, where are you going right after this?
Right after this, I'm going to the effing hangout on Discourse Syndicate's YouTube channel. That is a weekly show that very similar to the DGen Roundtable Whiskey Wednesday. You can come in. We've got the link for you, and everyone is welcome to come and talk about, you know, whatever kind of the topic of the day is. And I think tonight it's going to be, the title of the stream is What with What?
What with what?
What with what? That's the title of it.
What?
For the folks at home, you can find the StreamYard link, if I'm correct here, in the YouTube video description, along with the Twitter post that SJ puts out every week for the Hangout. And by the way, if you are not already hyped for the Pulse Chain Tour, we had the massive Las Vegas event, and we are going to Salt Lake City and Vancouver, Canada, as SJ mentioned. And the topics for the next event are going to be an event with future speakers covering various backgrounds such as blockchain, AI, NFTs, metaverse, and coding. I believe we have multiple special events confirmed for this event, including Donovan DIY and Fashion Coder, along with Hex-Ray Vision.
Yep, and the Tang Talk team. Both Drac and Brad are going to be there as well.
Beautiful. Shout out to the Tank Talk team, the second place winners of the Las Vegas Pulse Chain Tour Pitch Fest. They have an awesome idea for blending Web 2 and Web 3 creation. So if you want to learn more, check out the Pulse Chain Tour in Utah. Awesome. Thank you, SJ, very much for coming on. We always love hanging out with you. Much appreciated.
Same here, guys. And I'll see you whenever we're talking SciVive next. I'd love to be around. Bye.
Perfect.
Yep. What did I
So,
miss?
yeah,
I
I'd
gotta
actually-
show a
I would
wheel
like
and
to
then
kinda-
fucking disappear.
SJ got to go,
We're doing-
but we were covering
okay.
the final closeouts for your question about how do you do decision making.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I had a little bit to add on with what SJ was talking about, because she was talking about intuition, right? Now, technically speaking, intuition is actually tends to be, right? There's a lot of feelings involved as well, but actually a lot of these feelings do kind of come from automatic processes in your brain. So when you feel like somebody is off, or they're kind of creepy, or they're weird, right? It's because there's a lot of micro expressions that this person is showing your eyes that they're doing, that your brain automatically goes, what's going on here? You know, a little bit confused. So she is right in decision making can actually be part of that, can be intuition. But I fully agree with her when it comes to counsel, because for me, the way that I like to make my decisions, if they're just smaller, I'll just flat make them. It doesn't matter the outcome. But then again, that's the whole risk curve, right? However, if they're a little bit bigger in my life, what I'll do is I'll take as many data points as I possibly can, and I'll fit them all together, kind of mash them into like a path, all right, like a plan, you might want to say. And then I'll make multiples of those with multiple solutions at the end, all right? And so then I will start down what I think is going to be the best one for myself and my family to ultimately benefit us. And I'm going to start down that one. Now, there's always going to be a pivot zone in these plans of mine. And as I'm moving down one of these plans, if something goes wrong or something, you know, the percentage of success goes way down and risk goes way up, then what I will do is I will pivot over to the next plan. And so when you have 4 different plans that are the most likely that could have the outcome you want, I go down A, B, C, and then D.
That is a good process. I must admit, I'm a little bit lost. Go ahead, Zenith.
I was going to say, I gave one of the answers previously, which is that you have the rational versus the irrational version of decision making. Personally, this is something that's been beaten into me by the federal government, who so paid me after I gave my body to their service, so to speak, which is that judgment. The exercise of judgment is something that you constantly have to do. However, when you really think about it, there are 2 ways to view judgment. Are you viewing it as in consensus, aka what is the correct choice based on everyone else's opinion around you? This works great if you have very structured hierarchy, such as a boss or a series of bosses or an organizational framework to fit within. Outside of that, from the larger life plan, this is the one that you kind of have to wrestle with yourself when you're on your deathbed, which is that did you live according to your values and what you personally believe in as opposed to everyone else? This is one of those things where it's like your judgment is either based on making the correct answer to please the group, aka the hierarchy or whoever pays your checks, or are you living in accordance to your own conscience? Either way, judgment requires exercise. It is something you have to consistently do, and you have to build up to understand what you believe your correct judgment is. And at the end of the day, your judgment is your own. Other people might argue with you that it is wrong or incorrect. However, if you believe it is in alignment with your values and your worldview, then it sounds like you are living your life to what you think is your best.
I like it. Mrs. McGettit, have you spoken about decision-making stuff yet?
I have not.
You have not? Do you have anything you would like to share? Do you have anything you would like to share with the class? Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah, all right.
You don't have to if you don't want to. Like, we can, I'll do how we please.
No, the only thing I really have is kind of a short story, I guess. I had a friend who unfortunately has disappeared from Facebook. That was the only place I knew her, so we didn't get to connect anywhere else, and she's been gone for a while now. But one time we were talking about, does thinking something negative about somebody like make you a bad person? Because we were kind of discussing how, you see somebody do something and you think like, oh, you're an idiot. You just, something rude flashes through your mind, and then you're like, well, that was a horrible thing to think. Why did I do that? And we were talking about it just kind of casually, and she told me that she had brought up that question, the same kind of question, to her mom, and her mom had told her that the first response that goes through your head is an emotional response that society has taught you. Basically, it's what you see and observe, and kind of what life is that you see all the time, and your snap kind of thought process. That's the first thing that pops into your head. And the second response that comes in is like actually you and your thought process and how you truly think and how you observe the world. And I don't know, I guess that's always stuck with me. I kind of took that to heart, and that does play a lot of a big role in my decision making, because I tend to try to ignore that initial first thought process that goes through my head, and then wait for the second one and wait for the reasoning. And SJ brought up a really good thing that I also do all the time whenever I'm buying products or things like that. I tend to look up reviews, and then I look through 5, 6, anywhere up to 10 different review sites, and I look for whatever is a commonality on the recommendation list and whatever's getting the top reviews, whatever's in their top 10, and it's in every list top 10 somewhere, and I base my decisions off of that, because I feel like that's more of a reliable source rather than just I read one review online and this sounds amazing, so I'm gonna buy it. Yeah, that's kind of all I got on it.
Okay, I will say that to kind of just tie all this together, the way that I make decisions is I liken it to 2 things. One is a flywheel, and the second is a ship sailing. The flywheel is basically like I make decisions that are in momentum with the thing that I'm doing, and I just build and build momentum and keep going in that direction. And then that's one of my styles. And the other style is essentially like a ship that's got a heading, you know, like I know sort of generally where I'm going, and then occasionally the wind will change or I'll crest a wave or something, and I have to make a small adjustment in what I'm doing in order to maintain the course. Or like if I decide I want to go to a new place, then I make these like, you know, small deviations and correction, but just generally like in line with the thing that I'm doing. So that's the style that I use for my decision making process. And to liken it a little bit to Zenith's analogy of, you know, like prior service to the military and stuff, one of the things that we're taught in the decision making process is what's called the OODA loop, which is basically you're constantly going through decision making processes, constantly taking in new information, readjusting, making a new decision, and then like acting based on that, and then you get more information. And then so the OODA loop, it's OODA, it stands for observe, orient, decide, and then act. So the first thing you do is you observe. So you take in your surroundings, then you orient. You decide what direction you're, or like what's the like thing that I need to face and like target. And then you decide, you make that decision, and then you act. And then you observe more things, and then you orient to those new things. You decide, you act. Observe, orient, decide, act. Observe, orient, decide, act. Over and over and over again. So it's just a constant process. And the more decisions that you make, the better you get at making decisions. And I think like that kind of ties in pretty well with what Sam was talking about earlier, as well as Nate, the things that you had mentioned, and also the stuff Cassie you were talking about with your friend, and like realizing that like the first impulse is just an impulse, it's not controllable. Then everything after that is like, this is like your conscious decision making process. But these are all been fantastic decision making answers, and I want to encourage the folks at home who are watching this both live and on the replay, think about the ways that you guys make decisions, and think about the ease with which you make decisions, or the difficulty, the amount of commitment that you guys have, and not commitment, that's the wrong word, but just like willingness to engage in decision making, because that's one of the hardest things that we'll do in life, is just constantly making decisions about everything. And the easier that you make whatever your process is for coming to whatever conclusion you choose and taking whatever actions you decide to take, the better you get at making decisions, the better off you're going to be in life, and the more empowered and the more sovereign you're going to be. One of the things that we like to encourage folks to do is just be more sovereign. That's why we're all in the crypto space to begin with. So that's my final little 2 cents. Let's go ahead and jump right into closeouts. Zenith, we'll start with you, then we'll do Sam, then Cass, then Nate. And then guys, go ahead and tell the folks what you guys got going on in the near future and where they can find you. Zenith,
Perfect.
take it away.
Before we even get to that, I'm going to do my final shout outs to the chat. We have had so many folks come in and say hi and share some excellent thoughts. By the way,
shame on me.
One of those folks is Captain Land. However, first we have our good friend Fast Abdul. He is not here to talk about bribes, but here to talk about this thing called Dick with Butt. It sounds like that's what we're going to be talking about over on the effing Hangout tonight. He says, why are we even talking about this when we could focusing on the important things like Dick with Butt? Exactly. By the way, I believe this is a meme coin on Pulse Chain with the Dick Butt meme as the logo. So that's what we got. Speaking of our excellent commenter with Captain Land, he says a special guest is super cool. We also agree. Wild SJ is super cool as well. She is a very unique individual, and she also puts in a tremendous amount of work and effort for helping not just the Hexagon community as a whole, but also the Pulse Chain Tour. She is RG3's personal assistant, or maybe not personal, but Pulse Chain assistant, we'll say. And she does a fantastic job behind the scenes. So she is absolutely one of those less known heroes of the events. However, she is definitely one part of the backbone that holds it up and keeps it going. So thank you, SJ, for coming on. We really appreciate you. Next up, we got Jason Smith. He says, fam. Indeed, this is the fam, the DGen fam. After that, we got Charlotte Nightstar, the werewolf. Thank you so much for all the chats you've been putting in. We see everything you're putting in there. She says, hi, all. A very happy smiley face. Up next, we have The Funkmaster Hex, he says, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening to you, sir, as well. Posting up the drink. We appreciate everything you coming to all these and showing up. He's definitely one of the guys that really just supports the boys. We got Moonmutt said decisions. There you go. Thank you, Moonmutt. By the way, classy logo. That is the Pulse Chain Hex Pulse X combo logo. I like that one a lot. It's a nice piece of work because the X fits in very nicely with Pulse Chain and Hex. Lastly, we got Chad Donner Schwanz. My dude Will hosting while driving is the MF'n vibe. It is a vibe for sure as well. We got Will, our captain, at the helm, literally. So there you go. Excellent. All right, that is it for the chats. If you have any last ones, put them in there. We'll probably highlight one more before we get out of here. Other than that, thank you to everybody. I see Paul Sachs. I see Moonpilled Rational Optics. We got Charlotte. We got SJ. We got everybody. As for me, you can find me at Zenith DI or Hexago Space Force on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I try to post all sorts of topical things in the Pulse Chain community, as well as a good meme to help alleviate the tension and provide some insight as to what's going on. This is the book club. Next week on the book club that I'm hosting, we're going to be covering Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, and we're going to have special guest, the other side of the coin from Wild SJ, the captain, RG3 himself. He's going to be coming on the stream to talk about Outliers. That was his recommendation to us, so we are very excited to dive into the knowledge he wants to share with us. His previous recommendation was The Speed of Trust, and that was my Dark Horse Sleeper of 2023. So this one might be the Dark Horse Sleeper of 2024. Either way, go check out Speed of Trust and tune in next week for Outliers with RG3. That's what I got. Nate, where can the people find you, my man?
You can always find me here at the DJ Roundtable, just doing lots of things. I will not be going on the effing hangout tonight, even though I already said at the last hangout that meme coins are kind of the deal, right? And we should encourage it. Why? Because that's a ton of activity. And if there's a lot of people going back and forth with a lot of activity, what is being burnt? Pulse X.
Cough, cough, Pulse X.
Exactly. So now you've got a city, right, in Pulse Chain that a lot of people are moving into or bridging into, okay? And they're doing things on it, and they're going to realize just how much fun it is over here. But then you've also got a lot of people memeing back and forth, which is helping out the casino, Pulse X. And so for anybody who wants to sit there and say, no, this is a bad idea, I think that you need to take a step back and you need to look at the bigger picture, buddy. So, yeah, I've been getting dunked on for that, though, I guess. It is what it is. So. But yeah, again, though, I am doing consultations. I got to go grab my thingamabob here. But yes, I do have a. I'll just grab it and throw it in there real quick.
The link tree
is right here. All right, so I got this link tree right here, and that is where you can find me at all my socials, including probably the most important right now for the people getting left behind, which are consultations. So, yep, I mean, guys, I know some people are afraid of getting left behind, and as of right now, there's a lot of dipping going on, and we want to buy coins that are going to be doing really well coming the true altcoin season. Because as of right now, this is just a warm-up, guys. It's just a warm-up. And so, yeah, you want to be set. You want to get your bags packed and ready to go. So go ahead, hit me up at my link tree. You'll see it right there. And, yeah. So, Mrs. Maggette, what's up?
Not too much here. I'm just going to pass it on to Sam because I think he was actually supposed to be going first there.
Well, we call that karma because I cut someone off earlier in this conversation, so it's all good.
We're all friends here, brother. You're good.
Excellent. So, well, if you want to find me, first of all, if you want to get a hold of me, the best place to do it is Instagram at samuel.d.stevenson. If you want to check out some websites and other stuff, just go to thesam.pls.fyi. You can check out some stuff there. If you want to know what I'm about and what I can teach and all the residential construction stuff, check out the school server I've got. It's free. There's 2 classes right now. There is the home building program, the long version, and there's a framing design program. I'm going to be coming out with a condensed home building program, and I'm going to be coming out with a home design program. I'm going to teach you how to do what I do, drawing plans, so that you can do it too if you want to do it. And also, that's just like that side. If you want to see Bungalows for Bachelors, that's where I've got stuff where you can learn about construction, learn about how construction can help you and your family. Case in point, my brother and I, Will, are going to be using our tools and construction knowledge tomorrow to go to Temple or someplace in the United States. Not going to dox ourselves. Oops. And we're going to be demoing our mother's bathroom. So if you want to see Will and I get some like tool stuff going on, I'll be dropping videos and stuff out throughout the day on @BFB Success on Instagram. So if you want to watch that, check it out there. I'll also make a video. But yeah, a real example of using construction to better your family's wealth, right? We want to build wealth not only for ourselves, we want to bring it into our families. And so we're going to be using our time, our skills, and the things that we've learned here at Bungalows for Bachelors, and we're going to be putting it to work. Last thing I want to say is, for all of us crypto folks out here, we're here to make money, right? And one of the things that we all understand is wealth building, or at least we should. Excuse me. Just about, wow. Okay. And I just about guarantee you that there is space in your house that is wasted value. And so when you've got all your money and you've got your big bags and you want to get yourself a custom home, then you hit me up. We'll design you something and you'll kill it. That's all.
Hell yeah. Excellent. Good plug. I like it. All right. So for the folks at home who don't know who I am, I'm Will Stevenson. You guys can find me at linktree/Will Stevenson. I don't have the link handy and I'm on a phone. So you guys will just have to wait till we do another DGen Roundtable stream, which will be this Sunday. So come check us out on Sunday. Brendan and Zenith are going to be talking a lot about
hang
this.
On there.
Oh,
we got
what's up?
We got crypto coffee on Wednesday.
No,
after
Sunday.
Sunday.
Okay, yeah. I was like, what are you? What? Yeah. Okay, you're right. We do have crypto coffee coming on Wednesday, but before Wednesday, we're gonna do the Sunday stream, which is we're gonna be covering the FOMC news. Zenith and Brendan have some fantastic information on that. They're super duper in tune with what's going on a macroeconomic level over here in the United States. So I'm going to be sitting like a nice pretty flower on the wall and listening and absorbing for that stream, and it'll be excellent and fantastic, and I can't wait for it. And then coming up after that, Mrs. Magetta is absolutely right. We do have crypto coffee coming on. He has confirmed with us, is the word that I'm hearing from the rest of the production team, that he'll be here on Wednesday. So you guys can look forward to an excellent special guest Wednesday with crypto coffee. And like Zenith said, our next book club is 1 week from now, where we're covering the book that he said we were covering that I totally forgot the name of, but it's okay because you guys already heard it. You guys can find us all in all of our links for everything that we do is in the description below. It's a very large description. You can also find the link to join the Telegram. If you're too lazy to click on that link, you can scan this QR code that is right over here. Yeah, you can scan that QR code right there, and that will bring you guys into our Telegram chat, our Telegram community. It's free for now. It's always going to be free. Or if you want to be really creative, you can type in bit.ly/degenerate_roundtable up in your URL, and that bit.ly link will also bring you into our channel. And if you guys want to proselytize, that's how you do it as well. In closing out, Mrs. Magetta, go ahead and get that trigger figure ready. And I want to thank the folks at home for sharing your guys' time with us. To quote Agent J, we know that it's your guys' most valuable asset. And with that, I want to remind you guys to degen responsibly.